What's going on, everybody? This is Luca, the co-host of the Movie Pope podcast, and today I wanted to present something special because over the past few seasons that we've been doing the show, we've done a lot of trailer reactions, and then we reviewed movies based on the trailers that we've looked at. One of them we're going to be taking a look at today is the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. So we'll be doing both, showing both the trailer reaction and our full review. Hopefully this is something that we'll be doing later on in the future, but for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the hijinks of Guy Ritchie's war film, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are taking a look at the trailer for The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, starring a certain Henry Cavill. You know, it kind of feels like deja vu because didn't we review a trailer for another movie with Henry Cavill recently?
We did for Argyle, which I want to say really quickly. I know it's just kind of early reviews, but right now critics not like an Argyle at all. So
It's panning across. Yeah, it's panning across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, not that we ever expect it to be, amazing, but still. But
this could be the next franchise over there.
I didn't realize it was part of the Kingsman franchise either, because I was looking at a summary and I was like, oh, there's like connection to Kingsman, so technically it's already part of a franchise. It's kind of like with Hobbs and Shaw, being part of the Fast and Furious franchise.
Good example, yeah.
So today we're taking a look at the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is set in World War II and is actually based on Operation Postmaster. But obviously, being a Guy Ritchie movie, it is going to be heavily fictionalized, and it is going to be a lot more. What's the right word, Lee? Fantastical than it needs to be. But But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and let us know which trailers or movies you'd like us to review, because we're always looking. Because if not, I'm just going to keep recommending weird movies, and Lee is just going to keep asking himself, "Why the hell do I listen to this guy?" But without further ado,
ask it every day.
I mean, you always. If you've agreed to voice the Bushwhackers for this long, at this point, it's like you've got nobody to blame but yourself. All right, let's dive in.
I bet he's thinking like, ain't no way you're gonna CG off that much hair.
I want you to lead. Thank you, Sergeant.
What's the plan?
To neutralize the German U-boats in the North Atlantic.
We're losing the war.
I hate that now whenever I see Carrie Elways, I could just think about him and all the Saw stuff now.
We both know that I'm not very popular with the administration.
The reason they find you unattractive is the very reason I find you attractive.
If I'm to do this, I'll need my own team. You won't like them. They're all... mad.
They'll need to be.
This is an unsanctioned, unauthorized mission. If we fail, England will be condemned to a lifetime under the German boot.
I do, at least it looks like Henry's enjoying himself.
It's very good.
I will say I do have a soft spot for all those type of team-up movies, so this kind of is getting a thumbs up for me in that regard.
This mission now.
Hello, can't hear you. Please do off.
I just want to point out as well, not all of them were gentlemen, so I don't know how I feel about the title.
It's a bit of a misnomer, but then again, remember that movie, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, a few of them weren't gentlemen either. So
That's also very true. So I guess this is just the way it is. So, I mean, honestly, initial reaction, it looks like a ton of fun.
yeah, exactly.
It looks like a blast. I mean, it looks like the characters really enjoying himself. Like just seeing Henry Cavill with like his little tongue out there looks like, it's going to be a very fun ride. So, you know what? Hey, kind of interested. That's what I'll be keeping my eye out for as we get closer to its release. When's it getting released? Do we know?
We don't, but the trailer came out a few days ago, so I'm thinking it'll probably come out sometime around either late spring or early summer. I want to say.
There we go. Well,
but
keep an eye out for that.
But I mean, like just watching the trailer and like the whole premise of the movie. Obviously, you don't go and watch a Guy Ritchie movie expecting it to be like Oppenheimer,
historically
right?
accurate.
Yeah, I mean, you don't go to these movies to like to be intellectualized. You go over there to have fun, and it's very much got this this like James Gunn Suicide Squad vibe to it, as well as
yes.
I mean, it's also very typical of a lot of Guy Ritchie movies, but in a fun way because it's just a madcap romp. Just watching them just go out and just like blow up shit and just tear the Germans down. I mean, it's also kind of like the modern British equivalent of the Dirty Dozen, also. From way back in the day, because you've got this eccentric guy who's built up a team of a bunch of equally crazy people, and they're sent on this mission to basically take down the Germans and kind of make things easier for the war effort. So I'm really, really excited to see this. I think it's got a lot of potential, and I think I think whatever happens, whatever comes out of it, we're going to enjoy it, and I would love to review this movie as soon as it comes out. Can I just say it's just so fun to see Henry Cavill with the full beard, right?
Yes, very much so. Yes, very cool.
Because we've seen him with a mustache, we've seen him clean shaven, we've seen him with the CGI clean shaven look, which didn't really work, and now we get to see him with the beard. And can I just say, it really, really suits him to have that beard. He's kind of got his mustache, the way that you used to have your mustache set up. Remember? Because I think it was like a few months ago you were trying to get your mustache to kind of like curl up in a similar way. That's what.
Yeah. I guess I just wanted to see how you could do it, and I mean it definitely works, but that's just too much patience.
You're supposed to use wax on that one. That's why they sell mustache wax.
Duly noted.
But yeah, that's that's our reaction of the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It's a madcap World War II affair, but it's something that we're definitely looking forward to seeing. So let us know down in the comments below if you're excited about this movie as well. Do you agree? Do you think it's going to be a pretty good movie, or are you just a sourpuss and not a fan of Guy Ritchie at all? Which I say, shame on you. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next review. Bye.
What is to be done with this unruly company who do not obey orders, who seem to have formed their own Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare?
Hello, film faithful, and welcome back to another episode of the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are going to take a trip back in time to the late 1940s, to the waning days of World War II in the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. Now, we did a trailer reaction for this movie earlier this year, so be sure to check that out in the description below. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and let us know down in the comments what you think. Do you agree with our assessment, or do you think the Movie Pope is just talking bollocks? And as always, thanks for tuning in, and let's go ahead and dive into this movie. Now, I should say, Lee, now this was a movie that came out earlier this year that we I wouldn't say that we had high hopes for, but it looked pretty enjoyable based on the trailer that we saw.
Yes, yes.
So and it's a
I
Guy
totally
Ritchie
agree
movie
with you.
too, so
Mhm.
it's going to be a bit over the top and a bit, you know, what's the best phrase? Like violently campy.
That's a good way of putting it.
So why don't you go? So why don't you go ahead and take us into the story of what's going on here? Because surprisingly, this was actually based on an actual military mission called Operation Postmaster,
Yes.
in an attempt by the Brits to disable the German U-boat operation so America could enter the war later on later on in the 40s.
Yeah, and it definitely makes you very curious to learn more about like what happened. I think that a lot of this was declassified. I think it, if I recall correctly, 2016.
Yeah, it was very
So
recent.
yeah, so hopefully that date's right. But kind of cool to kind of picture kind of this group of people, right? Getting together and be able to do everything that's conveyed in the movie. I'm sure there's a lot of I would say it's probably not very historically accurate outside the characters' names. I'm sure they did a lot of cool things. Probably maybe not to the scale that it's depicted in this, but it was all everything else I would say was enjoyable, right? And I think I kind of forgot about the trailer, right? So I kind of went into this not necessarily blind, but I just kind of came into it with a very open mind about the type of movie it would be, right? So we kind of have this cold opening where we have these sailors kind of coming on the ship, and we get to meet our lead character, Gus. That's played by Henry Cavill.
Yeah, March
Um,
Phillips. Yeah.
yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the whole name. So,
Well, the Brits are
and
the Brits are peculiar about their names, so
that's true. That's true. So I will thank you for everything with that. And then we also meet one of our other characters, Lassen, which you could go ahead if you happen to know the full name. I just wrote last names down to give myself a break. And I have to admit, the cold opening was, I would say, fun, and it kind of sets up what to expect, right? So you see kind of like they're threatening them, and I like how Gus, right, played by Henry Cavill, he just kind of sits there and starts laughing at them, like, "What do you think you're really gonna do to me?" And that cracked me up, and it's so fun to see him playing this kind of, I would say, very hammy character, because like a lot of the stuff that I think we've seen him in have been a little bit more, I would say, straight laced, or he's very, I would say,
oh, he's very grim and
stoic.
very dour.
Yes, yeah, and I think back to him, and obviously I know we have very strong feelings about The Witcher TV series, right? That I think both of us would agree Cavill did a great job with, and the unfortunate direction of the show will be for a different discussion. But it was fun to see him kind of hamming it up, and I have to admit, just kind of seeing kind of the goofiness of it, like you see kind of there's like this big fight sequence where they kill all these guys that kind of board their ship, and you see like Lass, and he kind of picks up the corpse of one of the guys. It starts waving it across the ocean towards the ship that had sent them over, and I don't know, I enjoy that tone. How do you feel about like movies that kind of depict war like this? Is it like fun to give something to have kind of this more, I guess, jovial tone to a typically dark subject, or does that kind of take you out of the movie? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, I grew up on those World War II movies that were from the 60s and 70s, and whenever you watch those movies, you can't help but feel that there's a bit of an irreverence towards it, So like, and I'm going to reference this movie a lot in this review, so bear with me. But The Dirty Dozen comes to mind when I was watching this movie, because both of them had this sort of wicked, dark sense of humor about it. Both are set during World War II. Obviously, The Dirty Dozen's about 12 American convicts who are scheduled to to hang for various crimes. But their sentence can be commuted if they agreed to go on this nearly suicidal mission to basically take out the German top brass in order to make D-Day more accessible for the Allies. But throughout that movie, you kind of get the sense that there's they're they understand what the mission is, but they're not taking it too seriously. Um, and that's what you get with the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And I really, really like the fact that Guy Ritchie's kind of digging into that toy box of old school Hollywood World War II movies, and he's not trying to make it as serious as like Steven Spielberg would make it. Because I imagine if Spielberg made it, it would, it would be very, very, very serious, very dramatic. Everybody has their emotions out. Whereas here, it's like, well, you did butcher a guy. Well, all right, well, give us a hand, will you?
Yeah.
But I also like the fact that Henry Cavill. Did you get the feeling that Henry Cavill was enjoying himself? Because I felt
yeah, absolutely.
I felt like
Absolutely.
this was like he really, really enjoyed playing this.
Yes, it's a breath of fresh air for him.
Well, another thing too, because there's also a James Bond connection, because later on we do
Yes.
meet a certain Ian Fleming,
Mhm.
and you'll notice that at the end he's sort of they tell us that March Phillips was one of the inspirations, if not the inspiration, for 007. And we've heard rumors ever since Daniel Craig announced he was going to pack it in as James Bond that Henry Cavill was in the running. So even if Henry Cavill never gets the chance to play the world's most famous spy, I think this comes as a second, best.
That's true, right?
Yeah.
The origin for the character, so to speak. So yeah,
exactly.
So yeah, well, I'm glad we're on the same page with that, because I think back to movies like I would say probably the most common one is Saving Private Ryan, right? Which I would say minus like a few scenes where they're kind of in these moments where there's not a whole lot of terror and everything going on. There's some moments of levity in it, but most part is played very straight. So I would say kind of a comfortable kind of change of pace with that. So. But yeah, that's our kind of cold opening, and this is where we kind of take a step back a few days or weeks. I forget how long it had been, but it kind of goes back to the beginning where we have the recruitment process for this team. And I would say the plot doesn't really, I would say, do anything that hasn't been done before, right? You kind of have this ragtag team of kind of unconventional people that really excel in specific jobs, and they all come together, and the operation, like you said, Operation Postmaster, is very much there to disrupt the Nazi subs, and what they're going after is this bulk called the Duchessa.
Yeah, the Duchessa. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Say it rightly. It's Italian. It's Duchessa.
Sorry, I apologize. Me and my not Italian roots are just gonna have to deal with that. So
any Italian viewers of the show, please feel free to shame Lee in the comments below.
Yeah, it's okay. Even on the movie Pope, so you think I should be better with that, but you know what? It is what it is. And I kind of see this, and the movie comparison that I'm gonna do is like, what if Inglourious Bastards met The Expendables?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I went with it, and that's kind of where we start off. And I would say, there was these two branching paths, right? I want to get your opinion on this, right? Because we have our main group, right? Our main group that has kind of Cavill and, kind of the rest of the, I would say, main group of people. And they're, kind of on this mission. They make a pit stop to go rescue somebody. But they're really the action focus of the story. And then you have this second group, right, that has a character, Marjorie, in it. And she's kind of on a second, kind of mission that's happening on the side. And I don't know about you, but I didn't really enjoy that aspect of it. And I think the main reason is because the main group is way more interesting than that side group that's kind of working more on the maybe like espionage angle. So I don't know. How did you feel about that? Did you feel like the division was needed? Do you feel like maybe there was a different way to tell that story?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I felt the second plot was a bit dull because it was just mainly intelligence gathering. But that's the thing. Intelligence gathering is not as sexy as the movies would make would make it look out to be.
Yes.
But I feel like it was still essential because obviously they played a very important role in in Operation Postmaster.
Yeah,
Either way,
absolutely. And this is not, like I said, this is absolutely not taking away from what's there, right? It's an essential part of what it is. I just don't know if I think maybe you spend a little bit too much time with them than what was needed. I don't know, but yes, it was important for what was happening. It just maybe story-wise or movie-wise wasn't as engaging as I think our first group that's just going out there and murdering everything. And I think we kind of see that right off the bat because our main group is going to go rescue Apple, right? So one of the
Apple Yard. So.
Yes, thank you, Apple Yard. They call them apples. So yes. They have they're on this mission to go save him. Is kind of like we'll pick him up along the way to our destination. And it's so chaotic how the whole thing happens. You have like this group of 4 individuals that just go into this Nazi encampment, and they just flat out murder everybody. And they do it in a very gentlemanly manner, right? Like they're very casual about the whole thing. And I like how when they pretty much kill everyone off and they meet Apple, right? Apple's sitting there and he's got like, the clamps on his nipples and he's hooked up to a car battery. And I like how he just is not reacting to anything. And he kind of brings up like, oh, would you mind unplugging the battery? It's still on. So it just kind of shows how utterly badass the character is that he doesn't even react when there's these terrible things that are happening to him. And I thought that this was, kind of like a funny thing. And I wonder where they got it from. But, I remember the first episode of Archer, right, where he's hooked up to a car battery. So it kind of made me think about that. So I guess anyone that likes Archer, kind of a funny thing to see in relation to that. So, but yeah, how did you like just kind of seeing the film kind of let loose in this big action sequence?
Well, I mean, it's very typical of Guy Ritchie films to where people kind of just do all these like maniac things, but they're very aristocratic in their, their speech patterns and the way they talk. It's like, it's like later on where he meets, I think it was his name, King Billy. He's the Prince of Fernando Po, and they keep referencing their time at Eton and playing cricket. One eye on the post, one eye on the pub, the other eye on the pub, while they're going around killing all these Germans on the Duquesa. So there's something that's very tongue in cheek about the way that they go about doing things, and you kind of need it too because let's make no mistake about it. War is a very crazy thing, and it's very easy to snap and just fall to pieces. I think having that air of levity and just trying to make light of everything, that's just a way of keeping you sane as a result. I do want to mention too the way that Winston Churchill's played up in this too. I kind of get the feeling he's just as mad as everybody else. If not more, because of the fact that he's because in the other past portrayals of Churchill, he's very dignified. He's very, he's very solid. He's someone who's very determined. But here it's like, these guys are mad. These are my kind of people. I think I'm gonna wallow with them for a little bit, and I'm rooting for them. Oddly enough, did you know that the guy who plays Churchill is the same guy who played Bill Tanner in the Bond films?
Oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Roy Kinnear.
Yeah. Okay.
Because obviously because he's got the prosthetics and everything, but yeah, it's the same guy. So it's another 007 connection right there.
There you go. So, but yeah, and I think. I would say like an enjoyable part of that, like it's just fun to be able to turn your brain off sometimes and just enjoy the sequence for what it is, which, like I said, was just kind of like a lot of fun stuff going on there. I would say you don't really get to know the characters too well, right? They're very much like what you see is what you get type of thing, but it's fun to see them interact with each other because you definitely get this feeling of a bond that they get from, just being able to really excel at the different type of tasks that they're capable of doing.
So that's kind of a good thing too, because we've seen movies where they kind of go into too much detail about where these people come from and what makes them tick. Sometimes you just want to see a guy go ape shit with with an axe. I mean, you don't really need to think about it. We talked about this when we reviewed Furiosa. I mean, that movie spent, what was it, Lee, like 30 to 45 minutes focusing on Furiosa as a child, and by the time you get to the rest of the movie, it's a little bit too late because all the momentum's lost. Here, it's like we don't really need to know who these people are. We just need to know that these are the good guys you're rooting for, and this is what they have to do. That's it. It's very simple, very straightforward.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not needed, especially in something like this. Like, you kind of get like a blurb about the characters, right? It's kind of like hey, cool, this is what happened, here's his backstory, and they just move on with it. And to me, that's perfectly sufficient for what we need in this film. So I totally agree with you. It's not needed. We don't have to have some long-winded explanation of everyone's motivation. We just want to kind of see the action, how everything unfolds, right? And to your point, right? So we have the whole thing is going to be happening at Fernando Po, which is this island, and I believe it was the Spanish that had control of it at this time, right? If I recall correctly,
it was either Spanish or Italian, because we actually did meet the Italian commander, and then the guy who owns the Duquesa, he's Italian also, because he makes this huge kerfuffle about how the Germans ruined his ship by, I think they double plated it or something.
Yes. So we're on this island, right? And this is where the Duquesa is, and this is where I think like the intel part of things really kind of picks up, right? Because this is where we have Marjorie, and kind of her job is to ultimately kind of seduce this official Heinrich Lohrer, right? So that's kind of her purpose in this, is to kind of be the seductress that's there to kind of help distract everything, because obviously there's going to be a ton of commotion, there's going to be firefighting, and you really want everyone to be able to get in and out there as quick as possible. So they have this very elaborate scheme to kind of get like this big party going on. So this way, all the Nazi soldiers and everything are going to be located at these places, which will allow everyone else kind of the freedom to move about the island as needed to complete the mission. To what you just mentioned, actually, one of the things that ends up snagging the mission is the fact that the Duquesa, it has this additional iron plating. So the initial plan for everybody was to, blow up the boat and destroy it. Now they decide, well, if we can't blow it up, I guess we'll just steal it instead. Which, it's just kind of funny to think, like, you have this huge plan, and then, like, within, like, a few minutes, they come up with a totally separate plan that, this has to be weeks in the making, right? Like, this has been a well-thought-out plan, and you just kind of are like, okay, well, we're just going to chase things up. We're just going to steal it instead. So
keep in mind, too, this is a mission that's top secret, so not even the top brass in London know about this too. You remember when their fishing boat gets stopped by the Royal Navy? One of my favorite scenes is where Marge Phillips is like, "Oh yeah, we're just a Swedish fishing boat," and Lawson starts to explain it, but then the captain's like, "No, I want to hear Marge Phillips explain all of that." And Mark Schultz was like, "Oh, well, you got me. Well, can't blame a girl for trying, right?" So
yes, it is impressive what they do with that.
But to get back to my main point, what I really enjoyed was the fact that the Royal Navy gets wind of it. So now time's a bit of a factor, because not only does Mark Phillips' team have to stop the Duquesa, but Churchill needs to make sure that this goes through, or else his ass is on the hot seat. Because now the admiral is like really pissed off that he wasn't in the know, which, funny enough, parallels what happens in the Dirty Dozen, where nobody except for the top brass knows about Reisman and his convict suicide squad, as it were. And there's a wonderful scene where one of the colonels inspects the camp, and he tries to shut it down, and Reisman basically holds him at gunpoint and is like, "Well, yeah, you know, if you're gonna answer to anybody, you answer to me. So that you know, definitely brought that movie back to mind when I saw that scene when they were confronted by the Royal Navy. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that
No,
up.
no, no, no. I like it. Like I said, like the parallels. I've seen The Dirty Dozen once, but it's been a long time. So maybe something I could do after this is to check that out again, because I definitely remember enjoying it on the first watch. So, yeah. So we have, you know, kind of the plan. It's all going kaput, and they're kind of just very quickly transitioning into a different approach, which is to steal it instead of blowing it up. And that kind of, they're able to formulate a new plan very briskly to kind of have that operation go underway. And we kind of get a little bit of cutbacks between Marjorie and the main group as they're kind of doing different things. So Marjorie is kind of like caught almost, right? So this is kind of where, you know, we start to see some more of that tension building. So we see Marjorie is singing a song, and she says something in Yiddish, right? And this is what tips off Heinrich that, oh, well, you know, she is actually Jewish. And obviously this, to me, really harkens back to the Inglourious Bastards, right? Because a very similar thing kind of happened in the bar scene where somebody did something that was outside of what you would normally do, and they kind of pick up on it, and that's what kind of starts this, you know, extra tension. So yeah, so we have kind of that part going on. I would say there's really just a ton of action, right? So it's not going to go through every little action beat that happens, but our main group is able to kind of infiltrate the boat, and they murder everybody. It is ridiculous just to kind of see it, just kind of like the brute fighting. I personally really liked Lassen, right? Because I enjoy kind of his character, uses a variety of weapons, right? So you see him kind of with like the bow and arrow, you see him with like a knife, you see him with an axe. So obviously a guy that's very proficient with just being able to kill people. So I think he really kind of stuck out to me, as well as Henry Cavill's character Gus. They, to me, were the big standouts in this film. So yeah, how did you like just kind of like the whole sequence with them getting on the ship, and I guess what was your take on the action here?
I mean, it's very typical of what you would see in a Guy Ritchie movie. You know, over the top, violent action sequences, which, which are really, really fun to watch if you're that kind of person. I will say I was a little bit confused about what they were doing with the tugboats, because I had to watch it several times before I realized. Because I initially thought they were going to sink them, but no, they were just going to capture them because they had to blow the chains on the anchor,
Yes,
on the Duquesa in order to get it to move. And it turns out that when Froggy was putting the explosives, he wasn't doing it on the tugboats; he was doing it on the S boats. Because you remember later on when Lure's like, all right, well, we'll just pursue him in the S boats. You see that explosion, he's like, oh, never mind.
Yep. No, and I agree. It's hard to really know all the pieces in place during this process. I don't think they did a very strong job of just helping us understand all the different parts of it, because to your point, it did take, and you know, I watched this twice in a row, right? Pretty much. And it was a little bit kind of weird. So yeah, you do have like the tugboats trying to take out the Duquesa, and then you also have them destroying the U-boats that are there, because obviously the Duquesa, after the reinforcements specifically, she's not moving very fast. So I think that kind of causes it. But luckily, because of all the explosions, you know, we kind of have this tense scene where Marjorie and Lure are kind of like looking, or there's about to be like some type of confrontation here. But because of the explosions, it kind of causes things to I guess, get moved to the background. And then I like when Marjorie, she gets brought in kind of after all the explosions are happening, and she's captured at this stage. She takes out a gun and shoots Lure in the face. And I like how it just kind of happens, and there's like maybe like 2 soldiers that react to it, but that's it. And I'm just like, that's kind of really suspicious that literally nothing else really came of that. And now I get that there's a ton of chaos going on, so I could appreciate that maybe not everyone's paying attention to it. But it did feel very off-putting that, you know, she just kind of kills the head guy, and then minus like 1 or 2 soldiers that are kind of near them. They pretty much are able to escape from the area scot-free, and they go to the Takesa. Did you find that distracting at all, or was it just like, whatever, it's an action film, let me not focus too much on it?
It's a bit odd that Lure didn't have more people around him, but I could sort of understand what with everybody kind of trying to figure out what the hell's going on. It kind of you could sort of forgive them for being a bit short-sighted on that.
Sure. To me, I thought it would have been a cool opportunity to see her be, I guess, more in the action, right? Because there's a scene, right? You mentioned when we meet King Billy, right? Which we have talked a lot about, but not super critical to the plot. But there was like a sequence where it shows her like using a variety of weapons and being super proficient with everything.
Yeah, I wish we could have seen more scenes of her, you know, actually doing some fighting, because we only see her maybe twice, if if you count the Lure getting shot scene as action.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, that's what was missing, right? I think this was a fun opportunity for her to, like, maybe they're on, like, that little ship that they're taking out. Maybe it has a variety of weapons and she's able to kind of do a few things. Like, it was interesting that they showed her being very proficient with it, but we actually don't ever really sort of utilize that. I would definitely say, like, shooting someone in the face when they're about 4 feet away from you is not a very strong depiction of someone being very good with weapons. So I think that was probably something I think would have been cool, was to see Marjorie actually get a little bit more involved, especially at this stage in the game, because everything's kind of breaking down. The whole plan is kind of just hitting its kind of focal point of the chaos. And I think it would have been more interesting to have her do that. But like I said, just minor things that I think could have enhanced the film just a little bit. So yeah, Marjorie, returns to the Takesa that's now been taken over by our main group. And they kind of sail off in the distance. They end up being found out and captured because ultimately they were told to stand down in this sequence, but they didn't. And that's kind of what they are, right? They're not the conventional type of people that are following all the rules. So they kind of did what they wanted to there, and they get imprisoned. But we kind of see at the ending, we see Churchill show up, right? And he pretty much gets them out of there, and they end up being kind of a part of this, I guess, like, kind of undercover group, this Black Ops group that's going to be utilized in the future. And I did like how they kind of painfully put in the title of the movie here at the very end, where they're like, well, I guess we'll just call it, like, I guess we're the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. And they just kind of throw it at the end. So I don't know. I kind of thought that was goofy, but it is what it is.
But they do that in the Dirty Dozen also. So
yeah, and that might be a homage to that, right? So that is maybe where that comes from. So, but yeah, it is kind of something that they tacked on at the end, and I like how in the epilogue we kind of see like images of these people that we got to know and their real life counterparts. Obviously they're all dead because they would be in their they'd be quite old at this stage, but like I said, kind of cool to be able to see that and to learn a little bit more about them. Also kind of interesting that I guess Marjorie and Gus end up getting together, so kind of interesting there as well. But all in all, it was an enjoyable film. So I guess, Luca, any thoughts about kind of the closing sequences there?
It's nice to watch a World War II movie that takes events from from actual history and kind of adapt them, but kind of do it in a way that is true to what the director wants to do, while remaining true to the spirit of what actually happened. And I also like the fact too that Guy Ritchie just took the piss out of it. He wasn't really he wasn't gonna do it the way that Spielberg does, because I mentioned before, I mean, I'm sure you've seen Band of Brothers and The
Yes.
Pacific,
Yes.
as well as Saving Private Ryan. Yeah, there are moments of levity, but it's all very serious. They're playing it very straight. Whereas here, I feel like Guy Ritchie's not sacrificing the history for entertainment. I feel like you kind of get both of them in bucket loads.
Yeah. No,
So
that's
why
a
I
great
enjoy
way
it.
to describe it. Yeah.
I will also say too that the score in that movie is phenomenal, because especially in the action sequence where you kind of get like this modern synth kind of track playing, especially when they're on the Duquesne and they're taking down all these Nazi sailors. I just thought was pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. No, it definitely hit a lot of high points. And like I said, for like kind of an overall action piece, I did like that. To me, I was perfectly fine with having this like kind of less serious depiction of obviously very serious events. There are definitely moments where it really strikes you like kind of everything that's going on. But I still, to me, it didn't really take away from anything. It's nice to kind of have, I think, that different feel for a war film, because I think, there's plenty of good, accurate representations of war films that obviously are very serious for everything that's going on. Whereas with this, there's a different depiction of something where, like you pointed out, not sacrificing anything historically for what's happening, but still getting the gist of the story across, and maybe making it not feel as, I would say, like claustrophobic or constantly have to worry about anything. There's definitely a little bit of, I would say, fun when you kind of feel like everyone has plot armor and there's nothing that's going to happen to the main characters. So if I had to give this a final score, I would probably give this, I would say, a 3.8, let's say Calvarines out of 5. I think it is a very fun movie. It's obviously just kind of a pure action thing with some fun set pieces. There's some nice moments of brevity, but I think there are definitely parts where things are kind of get really slogged down and slow. I think there was an opportunity to maybe cut some stuff out of here that wasn't really needed. I think that there definitely was some opportunity there. But I think overall, like if you're just looking for I want to watch something, I'm going to watch like a war movie and it doesn't have to be super serious, I think that this is a plenty good option out there for people that want to do that. So, Luca, I will turn it over to you for our closing. How did you feel about the movie?
I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5. I'm gonna be really generous, just because it's such a fun movie to watch. Because it's a modern film, but it's definitely a callback to all of the great war movies that that I remember watching as a kid. Everything from Kelly's Heroes, Where Eagles Dare, The Dirty Dozen, Battle of Britain, those movies, and it keeps in the spirit of that, because the movies back then, treated war at, yes, they treated it very seriously, but the characters in it were, they were making light of the situation because they understand that that's the best way to survive, because it's all about having the right mindset. I think it's only recently where probably like around 98, that's when war movies started being treated with a more serious demeanor. Well, I wouldn't say 98, probably like the 80s, that's when war movies began to be treated with more seriousness. So it's kind of nice to see a return to to the way that war movies were made back then. I'll also say too, because the movie was about 2 hours, give or take, right?
Yes. Yep. I think it was hour 50 minutes without credits.
But I mean, like it felt like it went by a lot quicker than that. Like when you're watching it, because the action sequences definitely kind of push the action along, and I think it's a nice balance of, because to your point, because like with the Expendables, it's just all action, right?
Yes.
There's not a moment for you to slow down and catch your breath.
Yeah.
Here it's like there's a nice balance of these action sequences, followed by the intelligence gathering done by Marjorie and everybody else. That gives you a chance to kind of sit and process and kind of calm down before they go back to another action sequence. I do want to give a shout out to Henry Cavill. I think he did a phenomenal job as March Phillips. MGM, if you're watching, I think this guy will make a great Bond. Just saying. Plus, he also played Argyle too, which would be a very interesting movie to to take a look at later on down the road.
Mm.
But I will also say Alan Richter did a phenomenal job as Lawson, and what's her name, Eliza Gonzalez, who played Marjorie. I think she did a phenomenal job too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because she's playing all these roles. She's playing the role of a spy, of someone who's got to be a liaison, as a seductress, and as someone who's got to fight her way out of a situation. And all the scenes that she's in, I think she does a phenomenal job. She rises to the occasion, and she doesn't disappoint. And her singing too, I thought was just amazing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was the shocking part to me. Like I said, I'm assuming, and I believe, I don't know why, I feel like I remember seeing that she was a singer, but I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
There's always Wikipedia.
That was impressive. I guess it would take like 2 seconds to verify if she is a singer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I was definitely impressed by that. Yep, she's on Wiki says a Mexican actress and singer. So bam, there we go. And yeah, fantastic singer. That's for sure.
Well, I'll also say too, Henry Golding, from Crazy Rich Asians fame. I mean, he did a phenomenal job playing Froggy as well.
Mhm.
I just thought the times when he was on screen, he kind of just chewed it up. He just did a phenomenal job playing this very cheeky, mysterious kind of guy who's like, well, let's just take a bet and see which side wins, But he also kind of displays moments of tenderness where he kind of helps his friend out after he gets shot, while he's on the machine gun turret.
Very true.
Overall, I think the characters were phenomenal. Whenever you have a movie about a bunch of ragtag, individuals who are a bunch of ne'er-do-wells who could possibly have no potential, and you put them in a situation like that, it's gratifying to see them rise to the occasion. So, yeah, that's my score for the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. But go ahead in the comments and let us know down below what you think. Did you enjoy the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, or do you think it's just a bit boring? And if you're enjoying the content that we're doing on the channel, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And definitely consider being a member of the Film Faithful. The Movie Pope is always looking for more to follow his lead. And there are more episodes and more adventures coming up along the pipeline. So be sure to share this video with everybody that you know. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Fair enough. Game's up, Commander. Can't blame a girl for trying. Good.